global leaders held their breath. Cameras zoomed in on a young African leader whose words were about to shake the very foundations of the United Nations. Ibrahim Traoré, the revolutionary president of Burkina Faso, had just turned to face Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and in a calm yet thunderous voice, he delivered a chilling final warning that the entire world is still talking about today. What was said in that moment? And why is this speech going viral across every corner of the globe? Tonight, we take you inside the most explosive moment at the UN this year and the global earthquake it has unleashed. Close quote. The United Nations General Assembly is no stranger to drama, but what unfolded that day was unlike anything seen in recent history. This wasn't the usual political theater. Long speeches written by committees, endless praise of allies, and carefully measured criticisms meant to avoid offense. This was raw, unfiltered truth spoken in a chamber where truth is often the first casualty of diplomacy. Ibrahim Traoré entered the UN General Assembly not as a polished career politician in a tailored suit, but as a soldier, literally and symbolically. His military uniform stood out in a sea of expensive suits and diplomatic attire. It was a silent declaration in itself. I am not here to play politics. I am here to speak for my people and for the oppressed around the world. When his name was called, he approached the podium without hesitation. There was no nervous glance at notes, no false smile for the cameras. Instead, his gaze swept across the hall, locking briefly on leaders from every continent, before finally stopping on Benjamin Netanyahu, who sat with a composed yet guarded expression. Traoré began slowly, his voice steady but charged with emotion. Open quote, "We are tired of lectures from those who preach peace while fueling wars. Africa will not be silent when injustice is committed in plain sight." Close quote. His words hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. There was no clapping, only silence, as delegates shifted in their seats. Then came the moment that would go down in history. Traoré turned his entire body toward Netanyahu. The cameras caught the movement instantly, zooming in. The young African leader fixed his eyes on the Israeli Prime Minister, and with millions watching live, he spoke words that would echo far beyond that room. Open quote, "The blood of the innocent is not forgotten. The land remembers. And the day is coming when justice will not be delayed by the powerful. Choose peace now, for the clock is ticking, and when time runs out, history will judge you without mercy." Close quote. There was no shouting, no raised fist, just an unshakable calm, the kind that carries more weight than any display of anger. In that moment, you could feel a shift in the air. Even seasoned diplomats, used to speeches that are all talk and no action, sensed that they were witnessing something different. Within minutes of the speech ending, the clip was spreading like wildfire online. On TikTok, people were overlaying his words with powerful images from conflict zones. On Twitter, or X as it's now called, hashtags like Traoré UN speech, final warning, and African courage began trending globally. YouTube was flooded with reaction videos from Africa, the Middle East, and Europe, all dissecting his words. The consensus was clear. In a world full of cautious diplomacy, Traoré had spoken with fearless moral clarity. But to understand why his words resonated so deeply, you have to understand the man himself. Ibrahim Traoré was born in 1988 in a country that has seen more than its share of hardship. Burkina Faso is not a global superpower, nor is it a nation that usually makes headlines in Western media. Yet under Traoré's leadership, it has become a symbol of resistance to neocolonialism. Rising through the military ranks at a young age, Traoré proved himself not only on the battlefield, but in the political arena when he led a coup in 2022. His stated mission was clear: to free Burkina Faso from foreign exploitation and reclaim its dignity. Since taking power, he has made bold moves that shocked the West, expelling French troops, rejecting certain Western aid packages that came with strings attached, and strengthening ties with other African nations seeking true independence. To many Africans, Traoré is more than a president. He is a living reminder that Africa can produce leaders who are unbought, unafraid, and unapologetically proud of their heritage. His decision to call out Netanyahu at the UN wasn't born from personal animosity. It was rooted in a deep conviction that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The timing of his speech was no accident. Israel was facing international scrutiny for its military operations in Gaza. Civilian casualties were mounting. The world was divided. Some nations called for an immediate ceasefire, while others stood firmly behind Israel's right to defend itself. Traoré, representing a nation thousands of miles away from the Middle East, made it clear silence in the face of injustice is complicity. His warning to Netanyahu was both a moral and political statement. It was directed not only at Israel, but at every powerful nation that uses its might to dominate the weak. It was a declaration that the days of Africa bowing its head are over. The reaction was swift and polarized. Israeli officials dismissed the remarks as provocative and uninformed. But in private, several African leaders congratulated Traoré for his bravery. Palestinian representatives publicly thanked him for speaking when others stayed silent. And back home in Burkina Faso, his speech was met with celebrations. Crowds poured into the streets of Ouagadougou, waving national flags, singing patriotic songs, and chanting his name. For them, this was more than just a speech at the UN. It was proof that their leader's voice could shake the halls of global power. Traoré's words carried a patriotic undertone that resonated deeply with Africans everywhere. Open quote. "The days when we bowed our heads are over. We will not trade dignity for aid. We will not be silent to please our oppressors." Close quote. These were not the words of a man trying to win applause. They were the words of a man declaring that a new Africa is rising, an Africa that demands respect, not pity. Historians and political analysts quickly began drawing parallels between Traoré's speech and those of other legendary African leaders. Kwame Nkrumah, who declared that Ghana's independence was meaningless unless it was linked to the total liberation of Africa. Thomas Sankara, who rejected the stranglehold of the IMF. Nelson Mandela, who called for global unity against apartheid. Like them, Traoré understood that speaking truth to power comes with risks. But he also understood that silence can be far more dangerous. If you are watching this from Africa, this moment is about more than foreign policy. It's about seeing your continent's leaders stand tall on the world stage. It's about knowing that the voice of Africa can no longer be ignored. And if you are watching from outside Africa, this is about recognizing that the balance of global power is shifting. Leaders like Traoré are emerging, and they are changing the conversation. One speech cannot change the world overnight, but it can plant a seed. The seed Traoré planted at the UN is growing in the hearts of millions who now believe that courage still exists in leadership. Whether Netanyahu and other global leaders will heed his warning remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, the world is now listening. And for those who have been waiting for Africa to speak with one voice, that voice just echoed through the chambers of the United Nations, and it cannot be unheard. Background music swells with deep, inspiring strings. Open quote. "History remembers those who stand when others kneel." Ibrahim Traoré stood. And in doing so, he reminded us all that leadership is not about pleasing the powerful, it's about protecting the powerless. The world may forget many speeches, but this one will be remembered. Close quote. End card. If you believe in leaders who speak the truth, share this video. Let the world hear what they tried to ignore.